Howdy, folks. Happy Tuesday, and a busy Tuesday it is. We are joined here by Joe Yerdon. Thanks, Joe, for joining us. We're going to do our pre-show to start, and then we'll do our intros. And Russ, of course, our pre-show over the last few weeks has been concentrating on baseball and the dysfunction, and Rob Manfred just contributed to that dysfunction last night on ESPN.
Yeah, there's a few things. So with that, what I'm going to call interview, because it really wasn't an interview with Mike Greenberg. Mike Greenberg just basically let Rob Manfred just bury the players without any other side being given and never countering with a question. And I didn't see the whole interview, and I'm glad I didn't, but basically really only pressured him twice just to ask him if he's playing. What he didn't talk about was the fact that they asked the players to sign all their rights away in order to make this season happen, which, of course, no player in any union or no worker in any union's ever going to do.
Right.
And so that was left out of the conversation. And Manfred was kind of like, well, yeah, this is kind of unfortunate. And this is just, and it's like, way to show both sides there, ESPN. But at the end of the day, Manfred is despicable. He's despicable in the sense that he's trying to, he went on ESPN and I think he tried to gain public support by saying he doesn't think there's going to be a season. And what he doesn't realize is, and I did a poll the other day on Twitter, it's not scientific, but like 72% of those people said they're willing to walk away from baseball. And Manfred doesn't realize there's a large percentage of people now just willing to walk away from this season and never tune in, even if they had one.
Well, this is what I found out in just following what was going on yesterday. Apparently, Jan, there's talk about as soon as the Major League Baseball announced a 48-game schedule, the plan of the PA was to file a grievance. And apparently the only way that Major League Baseball can avoid the grievance is by them waiting to the absolute last second based on the agreement that they made with the players in March. And if their only option is to play 48 games, then they avoid the grievance because they're afraid that there's a possibility that the players would win the grievance and then several $1 billion would have to be paid by the owners, the full salary to the players. So they're avoiding.
What a shame.
Yeah, I know. But hey, I mean, that's what's going on.
I know.
So Jan, what do you think of that?
So there's a couple things. So, I mean, if you read some of the quotes from the players, I think Will Middlebrooks, who was a former player, came out and said it. Trevor Bauer's come out and said it, right? It's very clear. Manfred, as you said, is playing I'm going to slow play this for as long as humanly possible.
Right.
So 72 games is no longer an option on the table, and all we can get was the 48 games to avoid the grievance, right? But so if they file a grievance, the players, the owners are going to file a counter grievance, and the owners, I think, as you said, are paranoid that they're going to lose their case and be forced to pay an inordinate amount of money, right? And as Russ said, look, public perception right now is siding with the players. There's no question. There are some who are saying, well, shouldn't the players be held to their contracts? I'm like, yeah, they negotiated a cut in March. Granted, you can argue whether or not the letter and the email was explicit as to whether or not that if you don't have fans, that would enable you to further cut it. But here's a hint, guys. Find a way to talk together. The sending of emails or presentations back and forth isn't negotiating. It's public posturing, and right now, Rob Manfred, you're losing that game. I mean, we talked yesterday, Sosa McGuire, right? And you can say what you want about the steroids. Those two and Ripken brought back baseball. I don't know what's bringing back baseball if they don't play now, and especially if you have a strike after the CBA expires after next season. The fan base that you need to build, which is losing because of the minor leagues contracting, will never be brought back.
Joe, my grievances right now is that I can't see the Yankees play, and I think and can't see Garrett Cole pitch. So that's my grievance.
As much as the excitement of talking about grievances.
He pitched at Yankee Stadium yesterday, Mike. He was in shorts.
Yeah.
There's your shroud of seeing him on a Yankee Stadium now, Mike. Be happy.
Right. Thank
Nothing
you.
to get the crowd going like grievance talk, folks. Let's
Yeah, because we never talk CBA talk with the NHL, right, Ek?
Oh no, that was horrible too. Don't trust me. But the person who probably wouldn't be here were it not for CBA talk. I can tell you that, yeah, I mean, it's horrendous. I mean, but, thankfully. No, you guys are doing great stuff. I'm just saying it's just like, just
we're done.
Well, let's go to a happy topip. Buffalo.
Grievance discussion. It's like,
we buried the lead here. That's why we got Joe on the show.
That's what I'm going to say. Ladies and gentlemen, let's start this show. All right, here we go. Here we go. Hello, Hockey World. It is Tuesday, June 16th, 2020.
I'm Mike Agello, and I'm in the center of the hockey dysfunctional universe, Buffalo, New York.
I'm Jan Levine. I'm out on Long Island where news is not particularly favorable today either.
I'm Anthony Mingione from Sunrise Philly Magazine.
Russ Cohen from Sportsology. Father's Day shopping right behind me.
That's right, and that is Joe Yurden from Buffalo, and we are going to, and I am Eklund. You're watching Hockey Buzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com, and I will take Joe for the block.
Does that mean that Jan is Paul Lind?
I guess so. And you're watching the hockey. You got to be really old to understand that joke. First off,
yes.
We're all getting there. We're all getting there.
I bet you most people in our thing don't even get that.
Nice.
But anyway,
Luke Cockwood.
You're watching the Hockey Buzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. It's the podcast that comes to you every Monday through Friday to fill you in the comings and goings in the hockey world. And Joe, so we had you on not too long ago with like all this talk about, how, Botterill is safe and everything's good and everybody's fine. And then, of course, this morning we wake up to the news and of Mr. Botterill's gone. Kevin Adams, I keep wanting to say Kevin Allen. Kevin Adams is in. And what are your thoughts, Joe? What are your thoughts on this whole thing?
Well, I think we made the mistake a couple of weeks ago of taking the vote of confidence at face value.
What we were speaking up to know, the vote of confidence always lead to this, right?
Right. And yeah, I mean, I guess the information Kim Pegula had that they know better about things was something along these lines. This is it's like I said on Twitter this morning. On the whole, it's not a huge surprise. I mean, you can look at the whole picture of what Jason Botterill's done and say, yeah, it's probably earned. It's an earned, relieving of duties. But to go with Kevin Adams, who's been with the organization for a little bit here now, he's kind of risen up through them, and he's gotten himself into a spot where he's pretty close to the right hand of the ownership, and now he's running the hockey team. So I think that's the development that's really it's piqued my attention on all of this, is that, they didn't do any sort of outside look. They kept it in-house, and they decided to just, when they can't trust, and this is something Kim Pegula said, a while back in a story done by Tim Graham. I think it was Tim Graham.
Yeah.
May have been a John Warrow story too. Either way, that when they don't feel they can trust people on the outside, they turn inside. And that is what this move feels like to me, is that they don't want to look outside the organization, because there are certainly countless numbers of people that could get this job and there'd be no argument, but they kept it in house because that's who they trust. And that to me signals the changes that are going to happen in this offseason. They're not going to be breaking the bank. It's going to be some low cost. It's going to be some budget stuff. Which is really tough because they've got some big contracts to get worked out and to get figured out. And all I know is if I'm Sam Reinhart, I'm getting my arbitration case together very quickly because I don't know that I'm going to be getting that long-term contract.
I'll say.
Let me start, and we'll go around the horn here just to keep it organized. Since I was covering the Sabres and going to a number of games, I've been more attuned to what's been going on this year than in previous years. And I have to say, if there's a way for the Sabres to screw things up, they do. And even in this instance where it was not a popular decision to bring Botterill back, they took a PR hit when they announced it a few weeks ago. And now they take a PR hit because of the dysfunctional decision to let him go. Now they say in the press release, philosophical differences. Well, I'll just go here and make an assumption. Botterill goes in and says, I know I'm going to get fired if this team doesn't make the playoffs this year. And like Joe said, they're going to be under budgetary constraints. The Pegulas are bleeding money when it comes to the Sabres. The Bills, they're getting money from the NFL, so that's not as bad. But they're losing on the Sabres, and they're saying, okay, we're not going to go out and spend tons of money. And Botterill knows that they need to make changes, make additions, a second-line center, maybe boost their defense, maybe their goaltending, and knows that they're not going to spend the money. And basically, he's in a position where he's going to lose his job after another year because they're not willing to make the decisions that need to be made to make this team a playoff team. So he basically at that point said, they mutually agreed to part ways, or he got fired because he wouldn't go with the plan. That is ridiculous. I mean, this team has not made the playoffs since 2011. They are the picture of dysfunction, and they just continued it today.
Let me throw this out there for a second, because I'm going to go from a little bit of I mean, you guys are in Buffalo. Mike and Joe are both in Buffalo. You see a lot of this stuff that's going on. I'm going to go from the outside perspective. I'm like just a person who follows them. Like I follow all the other teams because I'm reporting on all the teams. And I'm going to say that what this feels like to me, whenever something like this happens, it feels as if there's huge change. There's huge problems with it. Somebody like Jack Eichel maybe wanted this to happen. Not that, I don't think Jack Eichel was running the team. But, usually it's something like this happens after a vote of confidence. The other thing, and I don't see Jack Eichel as ever being the kind of guy who would go to ownership and say, we want him out. But more than that, it really feels like you're afraid of going outside the organization because you're already down a certain path, and to start over again is really, like we've talked about, this team can't start over again. They have to find a way to make this path work. Joe, does that make any sense?
Yeah, I think that plays into the keeping it in-house part too. Just because they basically have all the notes together from what Greeley and Sexton and Bottrell done, and they're saying like, okay, well, try to keep Rochester on this path. We got they just signed Loxonen to bring him over.
Right.
Let's start. Let's not worry about that so much. We got to get Buffalo figured out, and then from that point, I mean. One of their people that they furloughed this summer was their analytics person. So it's like, well, they got all of that,
right.
They got all of Jason Nightingale's information. So,
right.
Why keep paying them if you've already got all their information? We've already got somebody that we're dropping a lot of money on.
Well, Russ, let me just ask you this. A guy we mentioned previous to the show, like Mike Fuda, who was let go by the Kings, and he's out there, and he's obviously a candidate for GM jobs. What do you think the first question that Fuda would have asked the Sabres in an interview process? How much money do I have to work with? How much autonomy do I have? And now you've got Kruger, I think, stepping up with his sway over the organization, and a first-time general manager whose main job up until last year was managing the Harbor Center and the Academy of Hockey. This is the Pagulas and Kruger are in control here.
Right. The first mistake for me is you should always look outside and do the interviews, even if you don't think you're going to hire anybody else, just to make sure your guy stacks up against what's out there, or so you could see the difference compared to what your guy is like compared to what's out there. The other thing is, I got to tell you, Randy Sexton and Steve Greeley, I've had many dealings with them with my XM show. Sexton was terrific with Pittsburgh. I mean, you want to talk about scouting and hockey ops, and Greeley with the Rangers.
Yeah.
These are smart guys. These are smart front office guys. They just cleaned it out. Who is there to help Kevin Adams? There's nobody. They don't even have a team president. Like the fact that right now their front office is lacking, and maybe they're going to put somebody else in there that they decide they like. But the idea is management structure-wise, they're missing a lot of slots, man.
Is there anybody else, Joe, in this organization that, could be helping them, like that could help them out? Or is that, and the other question I ask along that is this the other thing that comes to play with this is this kind of feels like an owner who might want to run the team. That's the other thing that you would see from the outside looking at. Yeah.
And the owner running the team part is kind of that, who do you trust? Goes back to that conversation. Who do they trust? Well, they trust themselves. They're the smartest people in the room as far as they're concerned, and they've got the money that can kind of back it up, I guess. But but I think when ownership talks here in another 2 hours or so, the fact that Kruger is going to be in on that meeting is really interesting to me. Just because coach isn't usually there for a new GM introduction, just off to the side. I think this is really interesting that Ralph is involved with that. Which I think the suspicion since Ralph was hired, honestly, was that at some point, just because of his background in running Southampton, and his entire TED Talk background and everything,
absolutely.
At some point, he's probably going to be an executive, and part of me wonders if maybe that time might be coming to, like he might be adding another title to his role to head coach,
like VP of hockey operations or something like that.
Something where he gets a lot more of a say involved.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, Ralph was hired he was Jason's guy. Jason knew him from back in the day in Winnipeg.
Right.
So,
Right.
So if I was Ralph, I'd be very nervous. New GM, even though it's an in-house guy, I'd be like, am I going to be sticking around here, or what's going on? But I know ownership adores Ralph, and I think they take great value in how he feels a business should be run. And I wonder if maybe he's going to get more of a hand in that.
That's what I was thinking along those lines. It would be a really interesting structure, Joe, if Ralph ends up getting, a executive level position with Adams. Again, there has to be like a level of synergy that's going to have to exist between the coach and the GM. At least it seems that way, even though even though Ralph was hired by Jason. It's just, I'm going to refer to your colleague Paul Hamilton. I know he stated that they've been grooming Adams. I'm going to quote this verbatim from Paul Hamilton. He said that they've been grooming Adams for this since they bought the Sabres. They wanted him to get experience in every part of the organization to get ready for this, which again is a fascinating sort of view of that when you brought in Botterill originally. And Adams has been with the organization for how long now, Joe?
I think it's about 8
years, and he was only thing he has prior to this, other than being on the business side, was he was assistant coach,
right?
And a player prior to that. So he's been steeped in almost entirely in the business side of things, with the unique background of being both an NHL player and a coach prior, but never in a hockey ops management.
You're right, Anthony. Doesn't it feel like that? Okay, we don't know what's happening behind the scenes. But it feels like over like the last couple of years, Botterill's been making decisions, right? And Pegula's liked some of them, hasn't liked some of them, but has been talking, like Adams and Pegula have been talking about it and like complaining to each other about it and like saying, it feels like that kind of situation. It's like, we're going to just take this and run with it because they did groom Adams so clearly. They've been grooming him before they had Botterill, right? So like whole 9 yards is completely.
But if they were grooming him before they had Botterill, why didn't they ever make him a team president or an assistant general manager so he could actually learn those things before taking over a position like this?
Yeah, I mean, he was.
Anybody have the answer for that?
No, he was named VP of Business Administration last September. So he had 1 year in terms of, and he got his MBA during the time that he was working as the VP of the Harbor Center. So I mean, he's setting up a business acumen in terms of being a business guy as a GM. But Jan, he hasn't been in hockey operations or behind the bench as an assistant coach since 2013. So we're talking about a neophyte here.
Yeah. I mean, I guess my question for Joe is this: is strip out the timing, strip out the optics and everything else. Do you view this as the right moves for the Sabre organization? Is it something where Botterill had earned enough of a leeway to be able to try to implement what he's trying to do, or has the moves that he's done backfire to so much of an extent that this was the right move, regardless of who they bring in?
I don't. My gut on this is that this is not the right move. Just because Adams is so green, and it's not to say that he can't be good at the job. It's just right now the way it feels, it does not feel good. I mean, this could turn into, and it's never a Sabre story unless you're referencing something from the semi-recent past, but this has a bit of a Darcy Regier sort of feel to it, where, he was an executive for so long in the game, and then suddenly he's got the job, and then he's got the job forever. And, that's not to say that Adams is going to be a GM for the next 17 years. I mean, if he does,
he's young enough, he could do it.
Yeah, it's true. Be incredible if that's the way it works out, especially given all the turnover here the last 7-8 years. But to me, this feels very much like a business crunch kind of move. Everything is just being consolidated and thrown under umbrella. And I assume he'll get to add a staff. I mean, he'll get an assistant GM to really get a handle on Rochester, I would imagine. But
he has to. But I also think couldn't that be? When they're bringing Kruger in for the press conference, right? Is that correct? That's what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, so that to me, and Anthony, we've done these things, and Russ, like that to me feels like you're bringing in a guy who doesn't have GM experience as your new GM, and you're going to bring in Kruger to be like, okay, he's there too. He'll help him out with that part of it.
And the Pagulas are supposedly part of the press conference as
Right.
well. So that that should be interesting in terms of them fielding questions and probably evading the
I remember when Bob Clark was hired, or it was Clark or it was Hextall actually. Sorry, when Hextall was hired, they had other guy, somebody else there too that was like kind of who we almost expect. I can't remember who it was, but it was like I want to say it was Homer maybe, but it wasn't. I don't know. Somebody would have more experience than Hextall at this thing.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm sorry. I'm so tired. Sorry, I forgot. It was when Homer was hired that they did this. And it's like, and I forget who it was, but you bring in somebody else. It's like, okay, he'll be fine because,
Yeah, they did have somebody. I'd have to go back and look.
Yeah, Kruger's got so much experience that he'll be okay because he can rely on him. So are they going to name him like a co-GM, or are we going to look at this like?
So let me ask this question. All right. So and you're right, Ek. And thinking along those lines, I will ask this question of Joe. Are they going to call the Rangers and bring in Lindy Ruff?
Please.
I think every Rangers fan wants that to happen. They did talk to Lindy.
Hedged enough for the Ranger fans, trust me.
Do they have Pat LaFontaine on speed dial?
Well, that won't happen. But
no.
But, I mean, they did speak to Lindy before they had hired Ralph. I mean, he was he was brought in. Whether they were just picking his brain or if they were seriously considering, rehiring him as the coach, I don't know. I don't know what the case was there, but I mean, certainly Lindy would love to get back to head coaching again. I mean,
well, it may not even be for head coaching. Maybe they're going to make him team president.
Yeah, I think based on today, I think anything you throw up in the air could be a possibility. As long as they used to play in Buffalo at some point, or if they grew up here, that's the well that seems to never run dry around here. Is that you just find somebody who used to wear the sweater or who grew up here, or both, and then there are possibilities. So hey, maybe Tim Kennedy, maybe he could be the assistant general manager.
I mean, the Pagulas are flush with cash now because Tim Murray's contract expires in 2 weeks. But this is the thing. It's been 9 years, and I'm just going to go through the guys I can remember: Tim Murray, Ted Black, Pat LaFontaine, Ron Ralston, Phil House. And we're talking. I can keep going here. You're talking a dozen names of team presidents, general managers, and head coaches. And what's the common thread? 9 years of being an absolute joke of a franchise. And this is a city that doesn't deserve a joke of a franchise. This is a good hockey town, and you've got fans who are fed up with the organization because they've been run really badly for 9 years.
I think we all agreed when we did the Sabres show, if they don't spend money, they're not making the playoffs.
Right. And that's
right.
To me,
and I mean, they're in look at the position they're in. That it's just very hard to make the playoffs. I mean, the reality is you got a lot of teams that are just way ahead of them, like we talked about, like teams that are just that you really have to unseat, and teams that aren't going anywhere. Teams that aren't on the downside of their upswing, but there's a lot of teams in this conference that are on the upside of their upswing.
Yeah, there's the Sabres right in the middle, just kind of treading water, and where they're treading water is the water is about right up about their forehead. So it's not where you want to be treading.
Right. I mean, what's the general feeling, Joe, in Buffalo about this among people on Twitter and things like that? Is it just what's the reaction?
I think the feeling is be careful what you wish for.
Okay.
Because the fans were pretty fed up with Jason.
Right. You always want somebody new.
Right. And they said just, get somebody in there and get this figured out and get it done. And apparently the Pagulas answered that because, when they addressed it, when Kim Pegula addressed everything, she said in retaining Botterill, said, I know this isn't a popular decision. The fans have had their say. And here we are, a few weeks later, and they're giving the fans what they want, but it's very much just like the genie's bottle.
Joe, let me ask you this.
You lose out. You got to make that wish very specific.
It's like the old assistant. It's like the old, backup goalie, backup quarterbacks, old thing type situation.
Joe, let me ask you this. It was about a week ago, I guess, that Kim Pegula came out publicly, maybe a little longer, and said she needs to do a better job. Did they relook at everything after she said she needed to do a better job and realized part of doing a better job was to make this move and try and do something because she felt like they were doing nothing?
Well, that's where I think the philosophical differences part really comes into play. Just because what are those differences? Where did they disagree? Because that to me says that they were having meetings and they were discussing what they want to do for the off season. And what's that discussion where the differences are so great that they got to say, listen, we're letting you go. And I think he had 2 more years on his contract. So they go from losing, Murray's contract, running out in, July or June 30th to being like, well, 2 more years of paying a guy to not work here anymore. So, I mean, it's to me that this is what I hope that we'll get an answer to. I don't expect that we will, but I want to know what those philosophical differences are. Is it the budget? Is it how they're developing players? What is it? How they're drafting? What are these differences? Did Jason want to draft X number? These sorts of players, or did the Pagulas take a look at things and say, listen, here's the budget we got. If you can't work with that,
let's play let's play media. Let's play. We're good at playing media. We've all done that. Let's play media for a second. We're at the press conference.
I've been playing media for 10 years.
I know. It's amazing. Somehow they fooled everyone. All right. So so we're sitting there and I just saw my Twitter. My Twitter feed just went nuts. All right. So let's just see. We're sitting there in the press conference, and the first question is going to be, after they say this thing, they're going to be, what changed between the time you said he was okay to now? What changed? And that's what you're saying, Joe. Did they sit down and have some conversations? Or Russ, you said, did they have did they say, okay, we talked, and between now and then we realized we were on different pages? And if that's the case, then why the hell would you? I mean, it's not like you don't have time to figure things out right now. It's not like
we're still evaluating. The phrase is we are still evaluating.
All right. Yes.
That would be the answer in most circumstances, which I know leaves an open loophole in this case, but then you give your vote. When you're sure and your ducks are in a row, then you say, then you give your vote of confidence.
Social media, you're better off not saying anything at all, because if you say you're reevaluating, that's just
if you feel compelled to have to say something, some kind of a statement versus being quiet, silence also speaks.
All right. So here's my question. You want to hear my question?
Yeah, go ahead.
My question is, it's for Kevin. Kevin, it really seems like the player development model here has been broken for the last few years. A, have you noticed it? And B, what are you going to do to address that?
It's a good question. It's a solid question, right? And Joe, you're playing Kevin in this situation. So
no, don't put him in that position.
Whatever is the most team friendly, put a smile on it answer is what it
you really think it's there? I mean, you really think it's gotten to that? Is it that bad? I mean, is it really?
Well,
there?
see, this. I'm sure I can sort of mimic what Adams is going to say. Well, we have a rookie of the year candidate in Rasmus Dahlin, and we have a rookie of the year candidate in Victor Olofsson, and we've got a really good young prospect in Dylan Cousins. So I don't see any problem in terms of our player development. The only problem is, I could have drafted Rasmus Dahlin first overall. You didn't need to be an expert to draft him. Victor Olofsson was drafted by Tim Murray, so I think 6 years ago. So, there is problems in this organization in terms of development. I think they rushed Middlestat. If you look at the roster, the Rochester Amerks, I think their average age is probably 25 years old, and they had a lot of AHL veterans on that team. And that's not a bad thing sometimes as support players, but you need young guys to develop, and they had
they might be rushing Cousins.
And they might be rushing Cousins if they put – and you know what? That might be the situation where the philosophical differences came about, because I think Botterill was looking at this and saying, I've got to make the playoffs this year. I got to make changes. This team isn't good enough. And if they say, well, we can't afford to make those changes because we're losing $40 million a year on the Sabres, then he basically says, okay, well, you may as well fire me because I'm going to get fired at the end of the year anyway.
It's never an owner who doesn't want to rush a player, guys. You know that, right? It's not the owner who's saying we need to keep him in the minors longer.
Right.
That's not the case. I mean, so if it is about Cousins, it's Botterill not wanting to rush him in and them saying we want to bring him in.
Could part of it also be with Jack Eichel's statement recently of his frustration that they felt that a need had to be made now, because if you have your face of your franchise expressing dissatisfaction, that bubbles up through the whole organization, and that may have been also a driver here. And Joe, you may know better. I mean, did he have a good relationship with Botterill? Was there a symbiotic viewpoint, or are they kind of at polar ends of their perspective of the team?
Well, the sentiment that I was gathering from the end of the season stuff, and you hear things here and there, and I mean, there's always rumbling discussion stuff, but it was not, from my understanding, it was not a mistake that the players all rallied around Ralph in the end of the season press conferences to show their support for him, which to me points that maybe there was already discussion of some kind of move being made anyways, and it's a total guess on my part, but
yeah.
But to me, that when you rally around the coach that hard after a difficult season, that to me points the finger somewhere else in the organization. And I mean, there's a lot of people involved, but there's only so many people involved when it comes to putting the team together. And I think when you have a team that spent the way that they did and spent way over the cap the way they did and had 68 points, I think that points the finger pretty squarely at the executive room.
I can remember one phrase that Eichel said in his end of the season media availability. He said, "I'm not going to tell him how to be the GM." But when somebody says that, I think they're telling them how to be the GM.
Yeah, I mean, or he's
or by him very overtly making his frustration known. I think he's sending a warning to the Pegulas. You better do something in the next couple of years, or I want out of this clown car.
I mean, but here's the problem they're going to have at the press conference. One of the media members, whether it's Mike Harrington, and it probably will be Mike, that says, "Are you planning on making the playoffs next year?" Even though they don't have a good team, the system is a little marginalized, you might rush your best prospect, and you might not spend a lot of money, that question is going to be asked.
Oh, yeah.
That's where the tap dancing is going to happen.
And Joe, it's getting to be like a New York Jets management here, where it's
Whoa.
we're a coach.
Well done, Michael. Throw that grenade right in the room.
We're taking this to the step.
We're a coach of a previous GM is now under the control of the next GM, and now the next GM is going to be looking for the next coach. I mean, I know in the press release they said, well, Kevin Adams and Ralph Kruger have had a close relationship. I would be surprised if Ralph Kruger knew who Kevin Adams was.
I wouldn't go that far.
Yeah, that's a little bit.
Ralph's a pretty hands-on.
Yes,
guy.
but I'm just saying.
No, I get what you're saying, but again, that to me, and it could be just a total nothing thing, but that to me points why having Kruger on for this whole introduction today is going to be interesting to know. And I don't know that they would bury a story like that, but maybe they want to casually just say, well, we're going to have Ralph's insight will be very needed here. And I mean, human shield coaches and DMs, but.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, he's a human shield today. Honestly, that's what I think. I mean,
I would be shocked.
Not a great position. This is this interesting thing for Kruger, because we all know like the story about him getting back in coaching and what he did, and he was very happy where he was before. So either he's really on board with this or he's really not. You know what I mean? That to me, there's no in between for Kruger on this. The fact he's on that panel tells me he's probably behind it. Or probably not behind it, not like he made it happen.
As a member of the organization, considering this is a major move, they want to have as much of the appearance of a united front as possible.
Exactly.
No, they want that. Kruger's not the kind of guy who has to do that. You know what I mean? Like he actually does.
He draws his paycheck. If he draws his paycheck, he will.
No, you're right, but he can get other paychecks. He's not the kind of guy who can't find another place to get a paycheck.
Let me ask Joe one question, Joe. Does Sam Reinhart's agent make a little call now and say, let's end this? You're not going to give the money that my client wants. Let's end this in an amicable way, and let's do this while you have this time now to actually make trades, being a bottom 17.
Well, I'm sure any of the other bottom 7 teams would love to add a Sam Reinhart to it. I mean, if they're also out of the playoffs, then yeah, I'm sure they would love to have that conversation. But if I believe his agent's Craig Oster, if I'm Craig Oster, I mean, I'd be annoyed first off because Sam probably should have had a long-term deal figured out 2 years ago.
Yep.
When he first became an RFA, after his entry-level deal was done, that to me is like, let's just get this figured out instead of just doing a 2-year bridge deal. But now he can command more money, which is good for him. That's the whole point. But the problem is the money there? I mean, these are questions I think that are fair to ask. I mean, we know where the Pegula's money comes from. It comes from natural gas, and those prices aren't very good now.
Right.
And they make a lot of money off from the NFL from the Bills, but I mean they're also putting a ton of money into that as well. So I mean, and now you have a season where they missed out on getting 6 more home games, and that's a few $1 million a game. Makes a big difference if you're already in a budget crunch. But it's the sort of thing where I think a lot of the money talk started to come up when O'Reilly was moved, because the big rumor was Pegulas didn't want to pay the bonus anymore, which is why they moved to get him traded before the day or before it came due. But
yeah,
I mean, that's all speculation, and we don't know that for whether that's true or not. But you can look back at it and go, well, I don't know what's actually going on here. And a lot of the moves they've made where it's, they've fired executives either, for philandering reasons or because, they just wanted to. It's a lot of people where they've cut out and just decided to bring it all under one tent. And it's the story my friends John Vogel and Tim Graham did. They've got a lot of people doing a lot of, one person doing about 3 persons jobs. And there's a lot of people doing that. And to me just points that finger right back in the same direction. It's just that it's at a really high level.
Well,
I mean, here's one thing I want to throw in there. Sorry, Mike, but is this like I was going back on my notes this morning about the whole GM search that ended up with Botterill and the different people I talked to who were interviewed with the Sabres. And there's one and a couple other assistant GMs and such. And the one thing that they all sort of said about this, like quasi off the record at the time, and I got one of them the permission to be able to use this today, was that the Sabres, when they went in there, they talked to them, and the more they talked to the Pegulas, the more they felt like they didn't just need a GM, they needed a general organization overhaul in terms of how things are done, in terms of the way that just, straight up like what Lou Lamoriello did in New Jersey, which is like take everything and be like, okay, this is how we treat different things. This is how different. Let's have they said they needed way more. And I know one guy even went in there with a proposal saying, this is how I think you should overhaul the entire thing. And I think it kind of overwhelmed them a little bit to the point where, they when they went to Botterill, they went to Botterill, who didn't seem, as intent on just changing everything. But there was definitely a feeling among the people who interviewed for the job, the more they got inside, the more they talked to them, that there was some general things that they needed to do that they weren't doing, that other teams were doing.
Well, I mean, this is the thing. If you look at the split between the Sabres and the Bills right now are on the upswing. They're very successful. They've made the playoffs 2 of the last 3 years. And the reason for that is because the Pegulas have very little to do with football operations. It's Brandon Beane and it's Sean McDermott. With the Sabres, Pegula has made it very clear that he was a Sabres fan going back. He treats it, there is, I think, a little bit of meddling and a little bit of getting involved in decisions that maybe he shouldn't because he's not a hockey expert. But when you're an owner, that's you have, if you want to be part of it, you can be part of it. But I think it's been to the detriment of the organization. And going forward here, if they're penny pinching and they're going to say, okay, we're not going to give Sam Reinhart a long-term extension, we're going to go to arbitration for the next 2 years and risk him leaving an unrestricted free agency or trading him. I don't think that's good asset management. And I also don't think, Joe, that if they could be proactive and sign Rasmus Dahlin to an 8-year max contract like Ottawa did with Shabbat earlier this year. But if they let him play out his 3rd year of the ELC and then he has another good year, they're costing themselves money. It's not proper hockey operations what they're doing right now if they go down that road.
And yeah, it's that to me has been an issue. I mean, to me, it starts with Reinhart, with just the way they handled that. I mean, they can say that they had pressing, other pressing things to do, whether it was Jack's contract or free agency, whatever was going on. But this is. I mean, this is something where it's just not being smart about how you have to try to get a handle on running the business side of things. And that's not to say Jason was very good at it either. I mean, I don't know how you have a cap strap team that does as poorly as they did. And not address issues that came up. Even last offseason. Last offseason, we knew they needed another center, and they decided to get Marcus Johansson and throw him into that spot, even though he hadn't done it in 7 years. And that to me just says, well, I'm not going to pay a premium price for that position.
Exactly.
We'll find a way to make it work. And you can't run an NHL team that way. You cannot.
Didn't they learn from Ville Leno that you shouldn't do that? That you shouldn't get a guy with a different position and push him to center?
So another big question is, are they going to bring Sabretooth back, or is he going to get cut too?
You want a real fan revolt, Sabretooth will be gone. That'll be everybody.
What are they going to do to fill the seats, Joe? They're losing fans daily.
It's crazy. I think back to like the 13-14, even the 14-15 really bad, those two really bad seasons.
Yeah.
They were still able to fill the building up.
Yeah.
Right.
And still came out like crazy. I mean,
this is crazy. That fan base is not going anywhere. I mean,
they had a waiting list for season tickets, Joe. I was one of the season ticket holders back then.
It was a 10-year-long waiting list, and it's gone now.
And what they did was they used to piss off everybody else in the NHL, the richer teams, is they would have this big waiting list, but yet they were one of the cheaper ticket prices in the league.
Mm-hmm. And that's why I think a good number of them are from Southern Ontario.
Yeah.
A lot easier to get tickets in Buffalo than to try to get them in Toronto or anywhere else. So,
it's cheaper to get season tickets to Sabres than
the Sabres were 20th in attendance.
Yeah, no, but I mean, they used to be just. I remember that was just a crazy thing when revenue sharing was going on. How people would be so angry at them for not, raising their ticket prices when they were doing really well, like back in right after the lockout.
Well, I'm sure other owners are still mad at them for not really jacking up the prices, but you can't really do that here, or else.
Yeah,
the team could be great, but if you're paying Chicago prices in Buffalo, that ain't gonna fly.
Well, they sold draft tickets too. I don't think they'd be able to do that in this climate either.
Yeah. Russ, why don't we talk about the Nassau Coliseum here?
Okay, let's talk about Mikhail Prokhorov and the Nassau Coliseum. So it was just
more good news.
Newsday came out with a tweet today. One of their reporters, Blackman, who basically said the doors are closing on Nassau Coliseum and the lights are out, and Prokhorov is trying to just get somebody to basically assume the debt. That's all he wants, and he wants somebody just to come up with $100 million in this climate. And boy, in one way, the NHL is lucky that they're doing hub cities and they're not having teams try and play at their actual building, because this would cause chaos. It still might cause chaos because the next season is not that far around the corner. And if somebody doesn't come up with $100 million, Nassau County's not gonna. They are going to have a problem. They may have to play all their games at Brooklyn if they don't get this resolved.
They burned some bridges at Brooklyn too. That's not.
Yeah, Jan, I'll throw in a couple bucks. You want to get together and buy Nassau Coliseum from Brooklyn?
Oh, doesn't this guy also own that building in
the Nets?
Yeah.
I don't think he owns it fully. I think he owns it with Nassau County. I think it's a deal.
It is a deal. I'm pretty sure it's a deal. I mean, Newsday's been all over this stuff. I mean, they restarted the building of the new Coliseum. Once the halt of the pandemic lifted a little bit. So I mean, we're looking at 1 year, but you think about, because of the pandemic, all of the other events that they were supposed to have there, that has taken off a revenue stream, which probably wasn't counted on by Prokhorov, who we all know had issues when he owned, the Nets and other teams in the local area. So this, unfortunately, doesn't come as a big surprise. But I mean, I'm waiting to hear from my Islander fans, because I'm sure they're all up in arms right now. And I'm about 15 minutes from there, so it should be interesting to kind of see what's going on at that place right now.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
There's probably a line at the bathroom. That's probably what's happening.
There's always a line at the bathroom.
This is not the best time to go.
Coliseum is a bathroom.
It's not the greatest time to go.
They renovated.
There you go. Hold on, let Jane tell this. This is the best.
They haven't done a ton of stuff at that arena.
And they didn't renovate the bathroom situation. That was the crazy part.
Jeez.
Oh yeah, no, that arena. I mean, it's a great arena, though.
It is. I mean, we all grew up there. Not all of us, but some of us grew up there. And I went to a ton of events there. I didn't get there with the new renovation yet, but it's just, to me, it's crazy that it has come to this, that it's closed. And what's even crazier is we haven't even heard from the league. Like, the NHL hasn't even made a comment yet. Bill Daly's going to have
so we might get something later on today.
Anthony, you got your USB craziness again. Sorry, just unplugging.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna hear a comment from the league, and it's probably just gonna say we're looking into it, but the league's not giving them $100 million to open the doors.
Well, this is not exactly on the top.
Well, remember, it's not as big as you think about it, right? Because there's no games going on there right now.
Yeah.
Right.
Likely with the schedule, you're probably not looking into December, right? So you have a handful of months to try to resolve it. It's not a pressing
Yeah.
item that has to be done.
No, but it's
Like,
it's close.
you want to get
pressing.
somebody started on it, right? But it's not like you have a month to resolve it. You have a couple of months to try to find somebody. It's not as if you're playing games there next week where he's shutting the doors and you can't open it because the locks are on the doors.
No, but you can't do an NHL schedule. Like if they,
Right.
let's say they decide in October, that's when we're going to release the schedule for the next season.
Right.
They can't do it if the Coliseum's in flux.
Right, agreed. They may be working behind the scenes to find somebody, but I agree.
Right.
They need to come out with some statement indicating, that they're on top of this and taking a look at it. And, Nassau County right now is not in the position to start laying out $100 million,
No.
given that we're still we were in phase 2 of the pandemic recovery. Phase 3 hasn't even really started yet, which isn't starting yet. And businesses here have been shuttered and hurting. So they're nowhere near the place to say, oh, yeah, we can cover $100 million debt. No problem.
I mean, I have to say, Gary Bettman's been able to do wonders before, but it is going to be hard to find somebody to buy this property owing $100 million before you open the doors.
So the only thing I can think of is they've given a portion of the land to Northwell Health, which is obviously which is taking a big part of it. With the new arena potentially going to open, you have to wonder if they're going to try to sell another portion of the land because they figure in another year they're not going to have to worry about the Coliseum anyway once the new arena gets built.
Great
What's
place for a cop.
Michael Lerner doing now?
Oh man,
How about Boots Del Biagio?
Anthony, you were saying we lost Anthony for a second there.
Yes, and
In terms of
You just leave him out.
it's all right.
That's all right. Don't worry
It's
about
better
it.
than Josh Harris trying to lay money out.
Why don't we
Oh,
get
you're
in-
going to start off on Josh Harris now. Okay.
I got another idea for the show, guys. Here, this is my other thought for this show. Ready?
there
Okay.
is news, but okay.
I just think that this is how we should go.
Oh my God.
We got this here, and I can do this.
Yeah, I get it. I'm not flooring things.
Come on, this is straight out of it.
As somebody who grew up in the 70s with my first name, clearly not the ideal there, Ack.
All right, fine.
Jesus, we got
Trying to
news
make
to
the
talk
show a
about.
little bit happier.
Yeah, I'm on the show. There is no happiness. Okay, there is.
Spoken like true Mike.
There you go. Now there was some news on the Hub City front. I was going to say Pierre Trudeau, but Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, came out and said 3 Canadian cities are asking to be hub cities. Obviously, the decision has to be made by the NHL and the cities and the provinces. Canada is open to hosting and being a hub city as long as it is okayed by local authorities. And then the head of health in the province of Ontario basically gave the thumbs up. So I think Toronto is moving ahead of Edmonton and Vancouver in terms of the potential of being a hub city. Now, I wasn't sure about it a few days ago, but now I'm getting the feeling that Toronto is in line to be that second hub city. Joe, what have you heard, if anything?
I'll be honest with you. I haven't heard anything about the hub city.
I do have a
Sticking
tweet.
with Buffalo stuff. Like there was,
Yeah, I know.
They put a bullet in the season. I was just kind of like, all right. I think
I
we're good here.
do have a tweet. David Pagnotta has a tweet that he said Justin Trudeau said about 10 minutes ago that he won't stop the Canada from having a hub city as long as it's okayed by the local authorities.
Right.
He's passing the buck.
Yeah. Now, they didn't say, I haven't seen anything released by the British Columbia local authorities or the Alberta local authorities, but the Ontario, Elisa McLeod, her name is, she was very proactive like a month ago saying that they were going to open up facilities. So basically, she said, we're the home of the Hockey Hall of Fame. We're the home of the Maple Leafs, one of a storied franchise and part of the original 6. And given our, blah, blah, blah. And I mean, basically, it's like, hey, take me, I'm yours, is basically what they're saying. And I think that's the case. I think Toronto wants it. They see a chance to make some money in this, and I think some of the local businesses will benefit from it. So
we have rights holders right there in the city. There's a lot of benefits to the NHL. Like there's no question that with TSN and Sportsnet, it is the focal point of the media in Canada. It doesn't make any sense, though, if you're going to put the Western Conference there. I'll throw that out.
That's going to be the best part of this is it's going to annoy Leaf fans that the Western Conference teams will be there.
it's
Yes, it will, Mike.
I really don't see
it
any
will.
issue with putting them. If all the other teams, I think every other team would sign off in a second to say we're okay with the Maple Leafs having it in Toronto. There are no fans. They're staying in hotels too.
No, but Anthony showed a tweet from Brad McCrimmon the other day, which showed
Kelly McCrimmon.
Kelly McCrimmon. Yeah, tell us. Yeah,
Second.
I know. And tell us about the tweet from Kelly McCrimmon. Do you remember it? I remember it otherwise.
Well, with a lot of their players basically being in Vegas throughout the entire, our players are comfortable. They're in the, and there's, you can interpret that any way you want to in terms of teams being sort of in their own home rink and having knowing, the sight lines and being, having, if there's any belief in a little bit of an advantage that Vegas would have playing in their own home arena as a hub city and the possibility of them having to be in a different city as a result because of some interpretation by other teams that they have even so much as a smidge of an advantage playing at home.
Do they know, if we shoot the puck around the boards at 4 feet, we'll hit that one bastion that'll come out in the. What are we talking about? It's like we're not like there's no.
But just think of it this way, Aki. In this world of COVID-19, what is the last thing that they want a problem with in Toronto? And that is groups of people getting together, say at Maple Leaf Square, and now even if they don't have the game on the big screen, them congregating because the Leafs are in that arena playing the game.
They're doing that anyway. They're doing that no matter where it's played. It doesn't matter.
It'll be less so if they're playing in Vegas than
that right now Mitch Marner is burying a toonie in the ice. You know it.
I don't know. Happening. I mean, it's just like, I mean, the Vegas, give it to them. They're an expansion team for crying out loud still. They deserve whatever they can get. And the Leafs are always cursed anyway, so it just doesn't matter. Give them that.
There you go.
I mean, but Mike has a good point. If you don't have their teams there, it might ease up the job the police will have to do to keep people away from the rink because people are going to want to be seeing them at the rink at the practice facility, and even in these times, they're going to try and sneak a peek. They are.
Yeah. We saw it happen. Listen, I still remember at the beginning of the pandemic in Paris when PSG was playing a Champions League game in an empty stadium. The crowd around the stadium was ridiculous. The stadium at Parc des Princes was ridiculous.
I mean,
and there is that possibility of that. I can't deny that part.
I'll give you that. I just think that in general, putting all the East Coast teams in Vegas and all the West Coast teams in Toronto it feels absolutely pointless. Like it feels ridiculous to me on many levels. Yeah, but
I don't know. Again, I've already said mine. From my perspective, I think it just makes logistical sense to have, if it's going to be, you're going to have an East hub and a West hub to play those teams in those places. It just doesn't make any sense.
I mean, that game of the night, you can have, you're not going to, if you're playing you're going to be playing these games at 1 a.m. You're going to start at 1 a.m. in Toronto, whatever.
How could these games seem weird when we're playing hockey in August? Like, come on.
No, it'll be phenomenal. I don't care. I'm looking forward to it.
There's been World Cups in August. Cut it out.
It'll be great. Yeah, some of my fondest memories. Canada Cups in August. Great stuff that happened way, way back when. But yeah, I just think I don't know. To me, I think it was just like thinking. It's like paralysis by analysis to me. Like that concept of at that point.
To me, they're overthinking it. That was the first thing I heard. Is just as Anthony said, East stay in the East, West stay in the West. Who cares if Vegas is out there? They're not playing in front of fans where they're getting a real home ice advantage. Why bother? Why things are already torn asunder and mixed up? Why create more things in terms of throwing in the mix that are sort of oddball? Just stick East and East and West and West and just go with it.
I mean, for the 3 games the Leafs are going to have to play against Columbus, is this really a big deal? Like, think about it like that way.
Yeah. Eck, I have to ask you.
He's doing his best troll act here. The 3 games after they get swept by the Blue Jackets. There you go.
In bigger news, Eck, I have to ask you because I noticed this picture yesterday, but I waited for it to play out just in case it was an early shot. But when Gary Bettman did that interview yesterday with ESPN, there was a hockey net behind him in his backyard. Yeah. And I wonder if you've gotten confirmation, like who's shooting on that net.
His grandson, he was picking top corner on him like Gary was Ed Jockerman or something like that.
People are talking about it on Twitter.
Probably Tom Barrasso.
I thought people were talking more about the squirrel that crawled in during the interview.
Well, the angle they did on the shot almost looked like Bettman was sitting there with the hockey net right behind Greenberg when he was interviewing him.
I'm always impressed that no one's shooting at this net behind me. I always expect someone back here, to take shots, and no one ever does. I think the show is ground to a halt, guys. I want to say
Okay.
we want to thank you all for watching today, and thanks so much, Joe, for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And
Thanks for having me.
Anthony, of course, it's just it's great to see it. Talk to everybody. It's great to talk hockey for a little while, even if it is.
Wait, we're not going to talk about the Ryan Reeves signing?
Sure.
Can I just
We
say
are.
here-
I'm going to keep on the Vegas theme here. You might as well.
It's a real signing. He got signed to a 2-year
2 years.
Can I
It felt like we were done, but that's
all right, but let's just
continue on. Mike, now to Mike with news.
for 1 second, because he signed a 2-year deal at $1.75 million per,
Yep.
and that's a significant cut from his current salary.
Yeah.
I think this is a recognition. He sees the fact, okay, well, he could be in the expansion draft, he could be exposed, but he took a significant pay cut, and I think you're going to see a lot of players.
Oh yeah.
I mean, he's not a borderline NHLer. He's an enforcer. He's an effective fourth line guy.
Right.
But I think a lot of players are going to realize the money is going to be tough to come by over the next couple of years. And if you can get a deal and you take a little bit of a haircut, it's better to get some security than to risk it, because you may end up at the end of that contract getting a 1-year deal for league minimum. It was a smart move for him.
For him. I mean, he's not a star. Stars are still going to get their money.
Stars will still get their money, just like in baseball. Mookie Betts will get $30 million from some team. But you don't think so?
I don't know, Mike. I mean, guys were trolling yesterday. They were already saying, "Oh, Mookie Betts is going to take a cut in pay." Guys were already trolling yesterday after somebody tweeted the Mookie Betts trade was still a good trade for the Dodgers. Some guy said, "Yeah, but Betts isn't going to get the $40 million." As the Red Sox fan who's upset still that they traded him. And
Right.
he turned out a contract from them.
No, there's no
extra,
question.
much to extra grim. We're back to baseball, right where we started
Well,
from.
I wanted to ask Joe if bringing it back to hockey, because we thought maybe Alex Pietrangelo might take a 1-year deal with St. Louis or a 1-year deal someplace else to wait till the money, till there's a bounce back financially by the NHL. But more than likely, he's going to get paid because he's Alex Pietrangelo.
Yeah, I mean, plus we have no idea what the cap's going to do.
Right.
From here out. I mean, I know people don't want it to drop, but I mean, how could it? I mean, you have to have that. I think that conversation has to be had if you're going to knock it down. But I think at that point it becomes a hairy thing where you got to talk about doing compliance buyouts, and I don't think the PA or the league or the owners certainly don't want to do that. They just don't want to hand out buckets of money all at once. So finding a way to get that figured out. That's where I'm a believer that they'll just hold it at 81. It was 81.5 for 3 years and just wait for things to come back. But I mean, you still got to get a new CBA done. You got to, you've got a new team coming in. There's so many things that just make this a really weird time to try to do any of this sort of prognostication, because you don't know what it's gonna play out like. Does Dahlin deserve an 8-year, $64 million extension? Does he deserve more? Does he deserve less? Is he going to take a bridge deal? Would you want to do a bridge deal with a number one pick defenseman who's done scoring stuff that only guys Bobby Orr have done? Like, I don't know if I want to do that.
Yeah, I mean, the paradigm has shifted completely. So I think, I mean, just in the UFA and research that I've been doing, which is a lot of it, trying to prepare for certain things that are going to happen quickly here at some point, hopefully. Is that
quickly in October?
Yeah, quickly in October, but it'll be right on the heels of the playoffs. Is that I think we're going to see short-term deals. I think we're going to see a lot of short deals. I think we're going to see a lot of quick deals, like because of what you're saying, Joe. Like,
well, not for Dahlin. I mean, if he accepts a bridge deal, I'll be shocked.
And
probably not Dahlin, but in most cases, I think you will.
There are going to be teams that even have a problem if it's flat at 81.5. A team like Tampa is going to be in deep trouble if the cap stays flat. A team like Toronto, with $40 million allocated to 4 players, 4 forwards, they're going to be in trouble too. And it may not be able to be solved by trading a Kapanen or Andreas Janssen. They might have to trade a big contract like a Nylander to be able to have operating room. So it's
trading a big contract right now.
One more thing, bringing it back to Joe for the Sabres. I mean, Joe, do you think there's really any chance that Dahlin's agent is going to say, yeah, go ahead and accept the 2-year bridge deal? Because I don't.
I would certainly hope not, but I didn't think Reinhart was going to get a 2-year.
Yeah, but it's a difference in players.
Right? It is, but
it's a different environment.
You're paying that guy a lot of money at some point, but at that, I don't know if you want to go the baseball contract route where you just tell a guy like, well, listen, we're going to pay you what we pay you just because we can, because we have you under control, take it or leave it. But, I think NHL players
Usually you lose those guys, though. The Mets do that game, and they usually lose those guys.
Yeah.
Right. And that's something, that's not a game you want to play with guys at that level. You don't, the fact that some NHL teams found ways to do it is fascinating, but it doesn't always really work out. I mean, it didn't really work out. I mean, it worked out great and for the team making the trades favor, or, trading with that team seemed to work great for Columbus, moving on from Ryan Johansson. I mean, that worked out. That worked out really well, but I mean, you don't want to be on the bad end of those deals. You're better off with the guy that you have already than going out and just changing it up.
Yeah. People in the chat are asking when they think the free agency period will be, and I think it's going to be in November,
October.
I think maybe November, early November. I think the second season. I think the next season.
You need a window. Yeah, you got to. Well, I would say because if we're looking at the beginning of 2021, or if it is if it's just 2021, as in starting in January and trying to get through the season, then I would say maybe it's October going into November, and then giving enough time for the players to move and reacclimate to their new environments and the new program.
I mean, you have to do the draft first. You have to do the draft first. You have to get all that worked out first. Then you're going to have trades revolving the draft. Like that. You got to give a little bit of time between the draft. Not a lot, obviously, but like a couple weeks in there. So I think you're looking at November. I really would be shocked if the next season started in December. I honestly feel like it's going to be January, but I still think that it could be the end of December or middle of December. And we'll see what happens.
How quick the playoffs go. Like that. That's a fact.
I think the tentative date for game, like they said, Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final could be like October 8th, and if that's the case, then usually the draft is a couple weeks after the final game of the Stanley Cup. So then free agency is about 4 or 5 days after the draft. So maybe November 1st is the July 1st of this year.
Yeah,
maybe that'll be Canada Day. We'll call that Canada Day. It'll probably be like who knows. Anyway, I think we're good now.
I mean, by November 1st, Eck could be building his rink.
I know. The
Fox is
everything. Hey,
we can put that on the stand, Zach. I can be the fan.
All right, kids. Again, thanks everybody. Again, and remember, without the buzz, folks, we'll be back again tomorrow. It is just hockey.